Not only is it nice to be here, it's nice to be here together. Yes. Right? Happy to see all of you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Jerome L. Greene Performance Space. I'm Helga Davis, host of the podcast Helga, right here at WQXR. I'm excited to welcome you to the second event of our Artist Propulsion Lab series. WQXR started the Artist Propulsion Lab series in 2021 as part of a way to support early and mid-career artists during the pandemic. And so, Artist Propulsion Lab member and baritone Justin Austin just finished his Metropolitan Opera debut in the new production of Hamlet by Brett Dean. Yes, you can give him a little bit of love for that. Earlier this season, he starred as George Armstrong in the opera Intimate Apparel by Ricky Ian Gordon and Lynn Nottage at Lincoln Center Theater. Yeah. And most recently, his performances include Elijah in Mendelssohn's Elijah at Carnegie Hall and a solo recital at the Park Avenue Armory. Justin also recently made his debut at the Lyric Opera of Chicago in Terence Blanchard's Fire Shut Up in My Bones, where he performed the role, and that's the role, of Charles Blow. He's very busy, and additionally, he has also collaborated with Ye. Does anyone know who Ye is? Okay, Ye is the artist formerly known as Kanye West. Why do you laugh? And he worked on his album Donda as well as Ye's 2 operas. Tonight's program is called American Perspectives, and it's a little bit different from your standard recital. In addition to musical performances, we'll also have a panel discussion at various points throughout the performances. And in a few minutes, we'll be joined by Bora Yoon, George Shirley, Ray Evans Harrell, and Ricky Ian Gordon as they discuss with us what it means to be an American. But to start things off, singing the Star-Spangled Banner, please give a very, very, very warm Greene Space welcome to Justin Austin.
Oh, say does that star spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
You know, I feel like I have to.
You know,
Excuse us.
you had one job.
Oh, Justin. I don't know. I love Ricardo.
No, he's great. He's great. We joke around.
All right. I have to ask you, even before I ask you my first question, what does it feel like to you to sing the Star Spangled Banner?
You know, I think it's something that is extremely important because I think it's something that we all have a relationship to in one way or another. And I wanted to start this whole experience with kind of coming together and being together and celebrating togetherness and celebrating our country. We've been through a lot of stuff.
Still going.
Still going through a lot of stuff. At the same time, I think there's still a lot of beauty to be celebrated and a lot of promise that this country has to offer. And I wanted to not shy away from that in any way and kind of start off with a celebration.
Well, thank you for standing in that promise and getting us off to such a great start.
My
this
pleasure.
Evening. What's the idea behind this evening?
The idea behind this evening, American Perspectives, is what we've entitled it, but it's really an exploration of what it means to be American. I think depending on which American you ask, you'll probably get a different answer. And that's the point of tonight. My goal in tonight is for everyone listening or watching to leave with an American perspective outside of their own and possibly gain something about their own perspective so that we can really share with one another and come together in the way that, you know, we all talk about, but I think there are things that need to be done. We, I think, have finally reached a point in our history where we are coming to terms with our differences. We are acknowledging our differences, and we are, in a lot of ways, respecting our differences. But I would like us to take it another step and celebrate our differences.
Uh-oh. Okay, we're good. And tell me a little bit about, it's interesting to hear you speak this way about togetherness. Tell me about hearing a Korean song for the first time.
That was probably the tipping point of actually making this a reality, this whole event. When I was in college, when I had first started college at the Manhattan School of Music, everyone that was in my studio, meaning everyone that studied with the same voice teacher I did, got together and we all sang for each other. And there was one student that sang a traditional Korean song, and it really moved me. It touched me in a way that I can't even really describe. And I felt an array of emotions, including shame. Shame that it was the first realization that I had that I had never thought to speak or befriend a Korean person. And it just wasn't on my mind. Tamara Kim is one of the artists here tonight, and we became close friends in college, but we went to high school together.
And you weren't friends until you went to college? I
didn't even know her.
Wow.
And I had to take a look at that. And I think the passion in the song that I heard, it made me think about my roots. It made me think about Black America. It made me think about my mother. It made me think about the spiritual. It made me think about my roots. And I thought to myself, I want to talk to this young man because this man has some soul. He was a soul brother. And I was forever changed after that conversation, and my mind was open in a way that it wasn't before. I don't consider myself to be a prejudiced person or closed-minded or anything, but I mean, I hadn't allowed myself certain experiences, and I don't know why. And from that point on, I felt moved and changed for the better, and I befriended a Korean man who is one of my best friends to today. And through our relationship, I have been introduced to the Korean church. I've been introduced to Korean food and culture, and it has just enriched my life in a way that made me realize we can't continue to just live for ourselves and not open ourselves to new experiences and different people. And, it's nature for us to be afraid of things that we don't know or understand, but how we have to be brave. We have to overcome these fears. And America is known as the home of the brave. So we should hopefully learn from my shameful experience. And that's sort of what kicked off the idea for tonight.
Wow. Yeah, it's a lot to think about and to take in, and that we are also, as witnesses, being charged to do something, to think about something, to open in a way that perhaps we are not accustomed to doing. And so thank you for standing in this.
Absolutely.
As well. Tell us a little bit about the structure of the evening.
So tonight's structure is a little bit unorthodox. We have a panel and a group of performing artists, and we're sort of going to relay back and forth between talking points and then a musical example of what we're talking about, and then kind of keep going back and forth with musical examples and the discussion.
Beautiful. I'm going to give it back to you in a second, but first, let's bring out our panelists. Bora Yoon is a composer, vocalist, and sound artist who has been featured on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, and her music has been heard all over the world. Please welcome Bora Yoon. Composer Ricky Ian Gordon has written opera, musical theater, and everything in between. Most recently, he's the composer of the opera Intimate Apparel. Welcome, Ricky.
Thank
you. And joining us on Zoom are tenor George Shirley, who was the first Black tenor to sing a leading role at the Metropolitan Opera. He's there on Zoom from his home in Michigan, where he teaches at the University of Michigan. Good evening, Mr. Shirley. We also have Ray Evans Harrell, who wears many hats, including teacher, director, singer, and more. He's the artistic director of the Magic Circle Opera Company. So welcome to everyone. Justin, It's on you, darling.
Thank you so much, Helga. Welcome, everyone. I would like to kick things off by asking a question to Mr. Shirley and Bora. Mr. Shirley, you can go first since you're the furthest away from us. The theme of tonight is what it means to be an American. To you, what does it mean to be American? You know, we have this idea of the melting pot that I know Mr. Ray Harrell disagrees with, but we'll get to that soon. What are your ideas of America being, the U.S. being a melting pot, and what does it mean to you to be American?
Well, to me, it is exciting to be an American, but at the same time disappointing because this country has so much potential for being the way shower, the greatest country on this planet. If it were ever to live up to its rhetoric, and listening to the Star-Spangled Banner, the part of it that stands out the most to me is the last sentence. Oh, say, does that Star-Spangled Banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Question. It's a question that has yet to be answered definitively. There's so much that is written. Give me your tired, your poor, your hungry masses yearning to be free. All of these things it says, this is a place that welcomes human beings. And yet, we see that there's always been 2 steps forward, 1 back. 2 steps forward, 1 back. A struggle to be welcoming to every human being that needs to be welcomed. To every human being that needs to escape hardship, disaster. But that has never really been the case for all who need to be welcomed by this country. And there are moments when we see ourselves surging toward a positive place. I look at American history. There have been so many times when there's been a crest of hope. I've often said life is like the waves of the ocean. There are crests of hope. In this country, a crest of hope was the end of the Civil War when slavery was abolished. That crest rode for a while and then dropped into a trough, segregation and other horrors. Then there was another crest, and the Civil Rights Act was signed, and we thought, now maybe we can become America, the America that is written in the Constitution, and the America that is here. And we rode that for a while, but then there was another trough. And we find ourselves now at a point, and this is so disappointing, at a point that, from my view, brings us, we're at a point where we're closer to civil war than we were or have been since the Civil War, because there are so many of those who oppose so much that is written in the Constitution. So the ocean always moves towards a shore, crests and troughs. We never know what that shore is. And for myself at this point, I can only pray that that shore is one that will make true the rhetoric under which we live, the flag that we salute, the Pledge of Allegiance, all of these words that have life for a moment and then have the life sucked out of them because we are human. One of the problems being human in this world, in this country, wherever we find ourselves, is that we, as human animals, and some people don't want us to think of us as human animals, but we are. We are one race. There are not different races. We are Homo sapiens. We are one. I've often said that if there were different races, then someone who looks different than I do, is a different color, their head would protrude from a different part of their anatomy than mine protrudes from mine. But that's not the case. We're all human animals. And as long as we are driven by that thing that drives animal life, we will always be at loggerheads. And what is that thing? Survival of the fittest. We look at animals, they are driven by survival of the fittest. I see the squirrels fighting over nuts in my backyard. I see the birds, the big birds come swooping in, and the little ones have to leave so the big birds can feed. And that's the way we are, unfortunately. And we see some things going on now in the world that illustrate that beyond a shadow of a doubt. So until we can conquer this part of ourselves and truly reach out and embrace one another as fellow human beings, human animals, mortals, then we will continue to struggle. And America's promise will never be fully realized. So, long answer to your question. I'm privileged to be an American, but I also know that it's a struggle, part of which I feel should not be the case. And I don't know the answer to that. For the 400,000 or so years that human beings have walked the face of the earth, I don't know that it will ever come to a point of being humane to one another. So I'm hoping that if that happens, it will happen here in this country.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Shirley. There are these certain buzz phrases from the Constitution: we the people, the pursuit of happiness, home of the brave, land of the free, in the Star-Spangled Banner, Francis Scott Key. What do these things mean to you, Bora? What does it mean to you to be an American? Are these phrases, are they poignant to you? Do they speak to you? What's your perspective?
Yeah. You know, it's funny because we grow up reciting these words in our mouth and singing them without necessarily even knowing what they mean at first. And the more that we embody them and grow into these phrases, I think we start to feel either the alignment or the misalignment of whether we believe this rhetoric and whether the inclusive language of we, the people, or home of the brave, or these kind of valiant attributes of bravery or freedom are radiant outwards, but also on the receiving end can also be seen as oppression. So I've also seen the opposite side of the word of, you know, if everyone is free to do what they would like to do, then that's when you get chaos. When you have, so everything needs to be tempered. And I feel like that it's always, being an American has been I've had an evolving relationship with the word and with the identity. As a Korean American, I think it's always been, being an American at first was something that was very proud. I remember all of my relatives in Korea would, if we brought anything from America to them, it was just always seen as immediately good. It was from a land that was much more modern, had so much more, it was just seen as progress. And then I noticed when our politics changed, how that dimmed as well. My reaction from my family became much more questionable, or they started to understand kind of these more national differences and alliances not aligning. And then this idea of being an American actually became something I wanted to hide at a certain point, or just pretend that I was more Korean than American at times. And I think part of that was driven by the fact that as my parents being immigrants, it was this paradox of progress, that this is a country that's built on so many people being guests in America, right? We're all from other countries and we all arrived at different times. And yet everyone struggled to establish themselves and to find a better future is sometimes at a cost, to leave one's homeland to come and supplant that for a better future that's unknown is a total risk. And so I was very much, just like what you said, George, moved by this idea of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I always see this in politics and also even in individual progress of, the family sacrifice might be to bring us all here. But also the paradox of that is that sometimes they don't want you to keep the home language. Sometimes they don't want you to keep certain parts of the heritage because they want you to be part of here. And at the same time, to be fully American and not hang on to your heritage, it almost seems that, isn't that a blind spot then? Aren't you actually supplanting your own heritage for another that is still being made? I believe that the energy that we put out into the world is also what comes back to us. So I'd like to say that the definition of being an American is something that I think is exciting, like George said, but also very hopeful. I'd like to be hopeful because I think that we are capable as a country of navigating this chaos, navigating our differences, not just tolerating our cultural differences, but actually celebrating those differences. And I think that comes a lot from this idea of seeing people from the inside out. I feel like so much of how we look at each other in America is from the outside in, which makes us focus on why we're different or how we're different. And what I love about tonight's program of going at it from music is actually that music always reminds us how we have a shared resonance, a shared story, or what you were just saying about your Korean friend, that actually the Korean struggle and the Korean story of a bifurcated country, of a country where your relationship to your homeland and also your evolving relationship with other in the diaspora, these are universal stories. And I think if we can lean into that, I think that's where our hope is, not in focusing on what makes my skin different than yours or focusing on all these observational details, but actually what makes us, we have a lot more in common than we do apart when we come at it from that direction. So being American is complicated. It can be problematic at times, but I'd also like to be hopeful about it.
Yeah, thank you, Bora. I appreciate that. We're going to hear some music that I asked Tamara Kim to put together for us. I asked her if there was a piece of music that reminded her of her feelings of what it means to be an American. And she thought about it, and she came back with Simple Gifts. And I think it's a beautiful notion, really. We have a special arrangement that it will be premiered for you right now. And it is by composer James Shepard. And it is a play on Aaron Copland's famous arrangement. But we have to give credit to Joseph Brackett, who is known as the librettist, but he is the composer of Simple Gifts. So I am very, very happy to bring to the stage right now Tamara Kim, who is a fantastic pianist and friend. And one of the things that I love about her is that she trained as a solo pianist, but fell in love with singing. and fell in love with collaborating with singers. So, like I said before, we did go to high school together, but we didn't become friends until the Manhattan School of Music, where after we graduated, she joined the staff as a collaborative pianist, and we have done many concerts together, and she's also my personal coach and my Korean diction specialist. So please welcome Tamara Kim. So much, Tamara. That was Bracket Simple Gifts, arranged by James Shepard, performed by the wonderful Tamara Kim. So we want to continue on with the discussion of what it means to be American, or what it means to be an American. Mr. Harrell, Ray, you disagree with the notion of it being a melting pot. You've told me once that, unlike any other nation in the world, the U.S. is a circle of culture rather than a melting pot. Could you explain that a little more?
Sure. First of all, I want to thank you, Justin, for inviting me to be a part of this illustrious group. It's a wonderful honor. And also to acknowledge my old Army Corps buddy, George Shirley. And I'd like for you to think about three circles, actually. The first circle was from a friend of mine. He's the father of systems science. His name was John Warfield, and he said, you know, the problem with people is that we are all limited. We're limited to the amount of information that we can gather from three places. First of all, our perceptions. Second of all, our epigenes. and third of all, our culture and our history. And in every case, that means we cannot perceive what the universe is. But when we come together, when scientists come together, and John was a scientist, when scientists come together, they can take that limitation and they can put it together, and they can all begin to get a greater sense of the whole of reality. And so that's the basis of modern science. And it's interesting that modern science came out of a meeting in 1575 in Florence called the Camerata di Bardi. And that meeting was with Vincenzo Galileo. And that was the beginning of opera in the West. Actually, it was the rediscovery of opera. Opera is all over the world. It don't, you know, it's like music. Music is all over the world. Opera is all of the art forms performed together. Johann Montezon called it the University of the Arts. And so in that circle of friends at the Camerata di Bardi, the Florentine Camerata, they went back because there had been all of these commercial ventures that had gone out around the world, and they thought they were really something in Europe. But when they went to China, and when they went to Tenochtitlan, and when they went to they didn't go to Machu Picchu, but to Cusco and to all of these different places, they found these multimedia events, operas. And operas have been in all the cultures all over the world. Opera means work, service, operation, cooperative. So anyway, when the scientists meet together, they can form a greater science in the circle. In opera, when we get together with Korean singers, Sung-gil Kim, the great Chinese singers, all of these people from all over the world come together to do opera in a great circle. And what they're doing is they're bringing that, we say that was a pot originally, and the pot broke. And when it broke, everybody got a shard. And so everybody thought that their shard was the real thing. It was on top. It was a winner take all, but it was a game. But opera is not a game. Opera is an art form. Opera is like a dance. It's not a winner and a loser. It's like an orchestra. You are only as good as the least. So you bring them all together in a great circle. And now all over the world, that circle is happening with opera, with singers singing music and sharing their music from all over the world in that great circle. And they look at the center of that circle, and that center of that circle is the dream of the original pot that was when we were all one, like George was saying. And we dream of that oneness, but we also know that we are individuals and that we are free. And in that freedom, that being together does not diminish us as individuals. Being together makes us bigger. So when we take it to America, we have the same thing happening right here in the United States. The United States, that was originally a covenant circle. On the first dollar bill of the United States, there was it was called the covenant chain. It was 13 circles for those 13 states. And they were all one and they were 13. And they all saw the world from a slightly different way. And they all contributed to each other, not as a soup or as throwing something into the fire and melting it all into one thing, but into being themselves, their own individuality. And in their individuality, they're able to see something and contribute something that somebody else couldn't see. They were able to hear something that somebody else couldn't hear. And in doing that, they were not diminished. Their culture was not diminished. You don't give up your sense of your being because you've joined someone else. A trombone is not a violin. A trombone is not a trumpet. They're all an orchestra. There was a man named Peter Drucker, great management expert, and I had a board of advisors for about 10 years for the company. It was made up of all these economists and everybody, and I went around trying to get all these people to join in a discussion. And I called Peter Drucker. He was very old, and I invited him, and he said no, not. But we had a talk, and he said, well, the image is an orchestra. And I didn't understand what he meant, but now I do. An orchestra is a collection of experts of all different instruments, all different places, all in the same conversation together and creating together, creating art. It is not a war. A war, we're seeing it in the Ukraine. They're bombing theaters, and they're bombing churches, and they're bombing, and on and on. It's not, Lebanon was a beautiful, beautiful country when I came to New York. Beautiful country. Now, Lebanon is a wreck. Now, Syria is a wreck. The war is somebody trying to be on top. The answer is, the only person that's on top in the orchestra is the conductor. And the conductor is only there because everybody agrees that he be there, and he has a job to do. And it's the same job that the trumpet player has to do, or that the French horn player, or the saxophones. Yes. My friend from the Indian reservation that I grew up on, Burl Lane, this contrabassoonist for the Chicago Symphony, and he played the saxophone in the pictures in an exhibition, and it was gorgeous. And normally you wouldn't think saxophone in an orchestra, but in that one was a saxophone, and it was equal to all of the other instruments. Without that instrument there, it was not. The piece wasn't there. So it's thinking of circles and thinking of ourselves as being absolutely crucial. And our cultures, we have to know ourselves, we have to know our culture, we have to know our history. And John Warfield had one other thing to say. He said, you know, we come to the world with a set of assumptions. And he says, the assumptions that we have very often are killer assumptions. They stop things, they kill people. And we see that now, we have assumptions. But those are what he called trussels. A trussel is something that everybody agrees is a good idea or is right, but when they try it, it's totally wrong. And so that is the art. The art is everybody examining that and bringing it together, dancing it, singing it, playing it. I mean, the art, but you must not give up yourself. You must know yourself. And you must know your culture. And you must not, you know, that they tried with the children to wipe their culture. They tried with the Dinka and the Watusi and the Yoruba. They wiped the language. They wiped the culture. They did all these things that, you know, but if you look around, you'll still see it. You see it in the way somebody makes a basket, or something like this young man in our community. And this is the last thing I'll say. This young man, we had brought a Cherokee community here in New York City, and we have it's a community of Cherokee scholars and people working together as a community. We wanted to be together, and this young man named Tony Smith is a psychologist, and he brought songs that we didn't have from the past. They were given to him, taught to him by his grandmother. And his grandmother taught him and his sister to do these songs, and they were the sacred songs of the stomp dance. And she was the daughter of a Cherokee woman who had been taken and put with an African man. And they were together. They had a family. They had children. They had grandchildren, Tony's great-grandchildren. And she kept the culture. And they brought that culture, that art to us. And we have it here because of what they did, because they didn't forget who they were. And so it's a magnificent discovery of the art. And that's what it's about. That's what it's about for me. So
thank you, Ray.
All right.
No, seriously, I appreciate that. You know, what I gathered, one of the things I gathered from what you said, Mr. Shirley talked about us all being a part of the human race.
Yes.
And what I gathered from what you were saying was that one of the essential things about being human are our limits. We are limited, but together we are limitless. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about being an American in this country is that we do have so many different cultures that are all here. And I feel like if we do come together, there is so much we can learn from each other. And how I'm a testament to that, because up until I got to college, my whole American experience was black and white, and that was it. And that was because of my narrow-mindedness. And allowing myself to be influenced and being brave enough to learn about things that I didn't know anything about allowed me to be a little bit more well-rounded within that circle that you're talking about. So thank you. I resonate with everything you said. Ricky, what are your thoughts?
On being an American.
On being an American.
I have to admit, I was thinking about it, and I was thinking how it's a hard question, because right now I've been really angry about being an American. And it's interesting. I'll just say just this morning I'm obsessed with the January 6th hearings. And I think, in a way, that one of the reasons I'm obsessed with them is because they feel like justice to me. They feel like, and I'm not even interested in the question of, will the right people hear those hearings? I'm the right person, because finally I feel like I'm hearing the truth. Do you know what I mean? And that is so important to me, because I've been very, very confounded by this country on so many levels. I mean, when I was growing up, I had 3 older sisters, and my oldest sister was one of the founding members of the women's movement. There's a book called Sisterhood is Powerful, and there's a big essay on feminine orgasm, clitoral orgasm, and it's my sister's. And but we grew up in a house where, none of the women were shaving their legs or their underarms. And like I would go to peace marches and feminist marches, and just to feel the country moving backwards in so many ways, it's been so disturbing to me. And I think I've been a very optimistic person, but I haven't been lately. I've been disturbed. Kevin and I, my partner, are looking for houses in Ireland, frankly. So okay, but what being an American means to me, actually more than anything, is that I can say this to you right now, and I won't go to jail. Wow. I can say I'm pissed off at this country. I feel like it's a lying, cheating, ugly place right now, and I really pray for it to become, America is an idea, and it's a beautiful idea, and America is not that right now. And I even found, I adore Justin, and, we're like beyond pals. But I was so confused when you were singing the I don't even remember what it's called. There's the whatever that song is, because I just was like, what does that mean right now? I was thinking, thousands of children get shot in this country, and people can't even come up with a gun law. I'm like, and people think freedom is having their gun, or not wearing a mask when going out into public can make everyone sick. You know what I mean? And I know we're past that moment, but I have been just very confounded about what it means to be an American. But I see that right now, if all it means for me is that I can dissent, I can scream and rail and say, I don't get it. This country is racist, sexist, homophobic, and miserable lately, and violent, and death obsessed. That's how I feel about America right now. But the one thing I'll say to you is, I'm an artist, and that's where I put my rage. I put my rage in my writing and in my music, and even recently, Lynn Nottage, our beloved Lynn Nottage, I had to call her because, and Justin knows this too, there was a poem I wanted to set to music, and for the first time, now I have set like 40 Langston Hughes poems to music, right? For the first time, I was like, can I be white and set this poem to music? And it's a poem by Lucille Clifton, and it's called Jasper, Texas, 1998, for Jaybird. And it's for the jaybird who was dragged behind a truck until his entire body disassembled. And there's a line in it, why and why and why should I call the white man brother? And I was like, Lynn, can I set that to music? And she just said, yes, you're not appropriating it, you're entering it. That is, if I'm the person that sets that poem to music, so everybody has to know that poem, that doesn't mean an African-American composer can't set it to music too. I just feel like the text is so alive and so demonstrative of this angry, dangerous place we're living in right now. So I don't know, I feel very uninspiring tonight. I'm so sorry, everybody, but that's where I am at the moment.
Well, you're very passionate, so that's great. No, I appreciate your words because, like you said, a part of the beauty of this country is you being able to express that and to allow us to come to terms with certain realities and certain perspectives. There are people in this country that their perspective is that it's all good, or that they're working towards it being all good, and we have to respect that that's not everybody's perspective. Mm-hmm. And that's a part of the freedom that comes with this country. And I thank you for your vulnerability and your bravery, and your frankness. Because a lot of people feel what you're feeling, but they might be afraid to say it. They might feel ashamed to say it. They might feel like it's not appropriate for them to say it. And allowing all perspectives, agency is important, because you are an American and you are a valued member of our society and of our arts culture. And we need to tell these stories. We need to be vulnerable. We need to be honest. And truth and honesty is the root of art. And we have to tell it. We have to tell it. We cannot keep it to ourselves. We have to tell it. So thank you for telling it. You know, when I took a look at what I wanted to sing this evening for you, as far as my perspective of being an American, I thought about Langston Hughes' poem, and I thought about Ricky setting it. And it's this short poem and short song called Luck. And I thought that since the composer is sitting right next to me, he would probably be the best person to kind of tell the story of this poem and this piece.
Well, I will say this, that if y'all come over my house and you see the room I write music in, this poem hangs over my it's like on the doorway. It's the sentry, and it's one of those. Remember that Poetry in Motion that was in the subways? It was a gift. Someone found it on the subway and gave it to me, and so it's this poem, Luck. I'll just say it. Is that okay?
Yes, please.
Sometimes a crumb falls from the tables of joy. Sometimes a bone is flung. To some people, love is given. To others, only heaven. And it speaks so economically of the disparity with which we all live, and with that we're forced to see all the time, that, you know, the wealthy and the poor, the righteous and the hateful, and the thing about that poem is also the idea that he could call it luck, and that luck in the context of that poem could mean 1,000 things. And that's what made, I think, Langston Hughes a great poet, is, you know, in 4 lines, he manages to sum up the entire human condition. And then the cynicism and love and ambivalence that it means to be human.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes a crumb falls from the tables of joy. Sometimes a bone is flung. To some people, love is given. To others, only heaven.
that's beautiful.
Thank you.
And to what you're saying, I feel, as they say, I feel your pain and your frustration and your anger and your joy.
Thank you.
Luck by Ricky Ian Gordon, a setting of a poem by Langston Hughes, sung by our very own Justin Austin with Tamara Kim, 감사합니다, at the piano. Joining us now is soprano Simone Paulwell. Originally from Washington, D.C., she has sung at the Kennedy Center, at Carnegie Hall, the Glimmerglass Festival, and more. Tonight, she joins us for two songs, one by Moses Hogan and the other by Samuel Barber. First, singing Give Me Jesus by Moses Hogan. Please, please welcome Simone Paulwell.
Thank you so much, Simone. That was the extraordinary Simone Paulwell, accompanied by pianist Tamara Kim, singing Moses Hogan's arrangement of Give Me Jesus. When I asked Simone to sing something from her perspective as an American, I thought it was extremely important that she wanted to share a spiritual, because it's one of the many things in this country that is gorgeous, deep, and profound, that came from horror, that came from ugliness, that came from hatred, that all was stemming from this country. And I thought it was a beautiful example of how terrible something can be and blossom into something that is beautiful. Because the best things are difficult and tough and hard, and it's the perseverance that allows it to grow stronger, and the things that are the strong things are the things that last. And I agree with everything Ricky said about where our country is at right now, and I have a strong hope and a strong belief that this is going to make us stronger than ever. And I thank you, Simone, for being an example of that. So please, let's just give a little bit more to Miss Simone. So I would like to ask another question to Mr. Shirley, if we can bring him back on the screen. We are in a time where art is sort of speaking about race and culture, and how important is it to you as an artist and now an educator to teach and perform works about your culture, and what are your feelings about other people performing those works that may not necessarily be a part of that culture? You know, there's this whole idea of cultural appropriation right now. Let's talk about it. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, first of all, pardon me. I just want to make a quick comment on Ricky's observation of where we are right now in this country. The tragedy is that we are exactly where we were when this country was founded. Nothing's changed. The cheating, the misuse of the indigenes that were here, the lying, the stealing from them of land that they lived on, that they claimed as their own, nothing's changed. If you look at it, we're still in the same place in terms of our reactions to one another as fellow human beings as we were centuries ago. That is the tragedy. The difference is that today, instead of hitting each over the head with clubs and rifles that shoot one ball, we have automatic weapons. We're still slaying one another. We're still disrespecting one another. So it hasn't really changed. We're at the same place, and that is the huge tragedy of America. As regards people performing music, once music is created by an ethnicity, it's out there. It is free for anyone to perform as long as they do so with respect and with enough expertise to make that piece of music sound like the piece of music that the culture that created it would respond to in a positive fashion. I mean, My people didn't create La Boheme, for instance, but I have a right to sing it, even though I'm not Italian, as long as I sing it with respect for the musical style, for the ability to sing the music in a manner that is one that is right and acceptable. And as long as, if that piece has words, that I sing the words, not just syllables, but I sing the words in a manner that, say, an Italian would come up to me after a performance and start speaking to me in Italian. I have to say, ma scusi, ma io, il vocabolario non è grande, my vocabulary isn't that large. So it's my job, as one who has been gifted with a singing voice, to sing whatever is out there. I don't care who's created it, but to sing it with respect for everything about that music. And so someone can who have skin that's white as milk, as long as they are in touch with their human emotions, they have a right to sing anything, and certainly a spiritual. I was just listening on my driving back from South Carolina yesterday. I was listening to one of my favorite recordings that I bought back in the 60s, Robert Shaw Correll singing spirituals. Now, I don't think there are any black singers on that album, but you listen to it. It is honest, it is moving, because the singers are attached to that place where they feel things. Where is that place? That's your solar plexus, where all of your nerve endings come together, where we feel emotion, where we feel pain and joy, all of those things. And any singer who is singing and is not in touch with that place is just making sounds. Like Shakespeare said, a lot of sound and fury signifying nothing. Sound is the whole meaning of sound, the whole reason for sound existing is to transfer or to deliver a message. So it's not just making pretty sounds, it's being in touch with the words and the emotions and make the character say those words. I ask my students, what's a solar plexus? And most of them say, well, and I tell them. It's that place where all of our nerve endings come together and back of where the diaphragm is connected to the sternum, where we feel emotions, we feel butterflies, we feel joy. And the interesting thing is that the mind connected to the solar plexus is connected to everything else that should be operating when we sing. There's a nerve that comes out of the solar plexus called the vagus nerve, not Las Vegas, but the vagus nerve. It is wrapped around your heart and is attached to your larynx. So that pathway has got to be operative when one sings, if one is going to get what that song is all about. So yes, I don't care. In my household, when I was growing up as a kid, we listened to Grand Ole Opry. We didn't listen to opera in my household. My parents were from Kentucky and Arkansas, but we sang spirituals in church. We sang. So even though I and my people were ripped out of their culture, there was enough of it still given them at conception, which made them respond to music in a manner similar to our ancestors who lived in Africa. So that connection is fundamentally important. So I say, my vocal competition that was founded some 11 years ago is open to all ethnicities. It's focused on the music of African-American composers. And I want singers of different ethnicities, not different races, there's only one, different ethnicities, to sing this music, but to sing it with respect, to sing it because they have a right to sing it.
Thank you. I agree. As a classical singer, some would argue that there is nothing classical about being black, but I beg to differ. And so I agree with you, and I appreciate your perspective, Ricky. I know you have strong thoughts on this. You mentioned them earlier about you grappling with agency to speak on certain things when you are composing works and when you are being a creator of that magnitude. How do you feel? How do you feel now after the beautiful words, the empowering words of Mr. Shirley?
George really helped me because I have to trust the part of me that wants to set that text to music that is a human being, neither black nor white nor Asian, nor that it is, I am responding to the human experience. And that, what George said about like the solar plexus, and I feel like I just have to trust that part of myself and set whatever I want to music because music doesn't come from the white part of me. Music comes from my heart.
Wow. Thank you. I am very happy to bring back to the stage Miss Simone Paulwell, who will be singing a song that was written by two white men. And you, my friend, are not a white man. But you chose to sing this song because it is close to your heart. Why? What about this song speaks to you? Why do you want to share it with us today?
So, sure, on this shining night, and I'm just going to follow through the text very quickly. Sure, on this shining night, today we are the stars. Me, you, Ricky, Bora, Emily, all of us. We are the stars that make the world go round. And we need each other more today, more than we will ever realize. Our world is in such a disarray. And me, being an African-American woman, there are things that I will go through that, for example, Ricky will not go through. But at the end of the day, I pray that we can all come together and really be one group of people. If that makes any sense. Sure, on this shining night of stars made shadows around, kindness, that's what we're lacking today, in my opinion. We are definitely lacking kindness. We are so blatantly we're so mean to each other. We're so mean to each other. And we need love. We need love. Kindness must watch for me this side today. We have to start today. The late year lies down the north. All is healed. We're looking for a healing. We're looking for something, a savior. We're looking for a savior, and that is exactly what we need. Me being a Christian woman, I believe in God. I believe in Jesus Christ. I believe that he is our savior. And this is not knocking what anyone else believes. This is just what I believe. And I pray, I am hopeful that one day we will all become one person. We'll all start being a little bit kinder to each other so that we can forget the past, so that we can forget the shadows around the stars, of shadows on the stars, as the very last words of this piece. And I just pray that one day we'll see each other in a better light. We'll see each other in one light, as opposed to seeing Simone as a black woman, seeing Ricky as a white man, seeing Bora as an Asian woman. We just need to be one. We just need to be a people.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
You don't need that microphone, but I do.
Yeah.
Kindness must watch for
Thank you, Simone and Tamara. Again, that was Samuel Barber's setting of James Agee's poem, Sure on This Shining Night. Thank you, Tamara Kim and Simone Paulwell. Bora, how do you feel about cultural appropriation? And how important is it to you as a creative, as someone who writes music, but also someone who performs it, to speak on your heritage and to allow that to shine through your artistry? And how do you feel about others that aren't your heritage participating in that?
I agree with George in the sense that music is, when someone writes a song or creates a world, right? That's kind of what's contained in a song, I think, or an aria. You're keying into that emotion, that historical context, whatever's happening in the emotional landscape of that character, of that moment that birthed that song. I think that music is, as long as it is, as you said, as long as you've entered it, instead of, I think it's always very prepositional. You can't go at it. It's not, but if you are with it, if you are from it, if you are of it, I think that's the direction of authenticity, of something that's genuine. And that is essentially what makes the heart speak. I think that, as we're creatures. We are humans, and we're very intelligent, but at the same time, at a very kind of limbic level, we're creatures, and we have a lot of different emotional responses. And I feel that if we can utilize music as a vehicle to help us actually understand each other and empathize with each other and become portals of how certain contexts become discussed, how people tap into other moments of history that may or may not be yours, as long as it's framed, as long as it's shared respectfully and in a manner that's authentic and genuine, and with the intention to connect to people. I think that music then serves its ultimate goal, which is to be a vehicle of how we connect to one another from the inside out.
Well, I agree with you. Mr. Ray Evans Harrell was speaking to me the other day about art is a mask, and the mask is sacred. And when we put on the mask, it is our job to be true to the mask. And like Mr. Shirley says, you have to respect the mask that you put on. You have to respect the culture that you are representing. You have to do the research to be able to know and have a sense of empathy about what you're speaking about. And Mr. Harrell says, if you aren't true to the mask, then the mask can destroy you. And I think that's profound. And I would like to close this evening's performance/discussion with a Korean song. I am being vulnerable. I'm being brave. And I am allowing myself to be open enough to be honest. And a part of my truth is I am a vessel. And I think it is my job to share. And I am limited, as we talked about before, and I only have my perspective. But if I learn about others, then I'm able to share more. And I hope that this piece speaks to you in some way, and I hope that this evening has enlightened you in some way. I know it's been a long evening, but it's been full of valuable information. And I asked Tamara, who again is my coach and collaborator, if she could recommend a few traditional Korean songs, and she gave me a list and gave me descriptions and the history. And the one that spoke to me the most is this piece called "Waiting Heart." And we were just speaking in the green room because it's about a man that has left everything behind, and he is having a discussion about that and how longing yet still staying in the moment of where he is. And I felt that connected to this idea of being American, because so many Americans have left behind everything to be here and for the promise of a brighter future. And, you know, Simone's family is from Jamaica, and she was telling us a story about how her parents left everything and came here with barely nothing because of this dream of the future, of the land of the free, and what we identify as the American dream. And it produced something like Simone. And Simone is the American dream. Tamara is the American dream. I am the American dream. You all are the American dream. And I love you. I appreciate you. And after this, we'll hold some questions if you have any. But this is from me to you.
is Justin Austin. That was Waiting Heart by Jang Il-nam with text by Kim Min-boo. And thank you very much, Tamara Kim. I want to just say thank you for being here with us this evening, and thank you to all of our guests tonight. This is Justin Austin. Where is Simone? There she is. Simone Paulwell, come up here and just let's stand together. Tamara Kim, Bora Yoon, George Shirley, Ray Evans Harrell, Ricky Ian Gordon. Thank you very much to you for being here with us this evening. Thank you to the Greene Space staff, David McLean, Ricardo Fernandez, Chase Copland, Max Fine, Eileen Delahunty, Jay Jung, and Jennifer Sendrow. Thank you also to Hanako Yamaguchi, and thank you to Steinway for the Sperry piano. I'm Helga Davis. Thank you for joining us here in the Jerome L. Greene Space this evening. Come back and see us again.